Episode of Threads of Enlightenment, and you know how I like to do it here in the house, is to welcome our guests because I know they're coming with a couple of things I personally deem very, very expensive: time. It is a commodity given to mankind. All of us are allotted 24 hours. What we do with that is all up to you, and that's based on how we think and how we process our thoughts and manifest things in our life. The other is their journey. The journey housed who they were and made them who they are today. And Logan is here to share both and spend some of this expensive stuff with us here today. So we want to welcome him. Thank him for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Good to be here, man.
My pleasure, man. Tell the folks the things that you have, that you're serving mankind, all of it. Just let them know how to reach you, stuff like that. And then we'll get into how did you get there?
Yeah. Yeah, so at the moment on the side, I run a marketing agency. That's what I've been doing for the last couple of years. But my main thing and my main purpose is to help people, like you said. And basically, I'm building my personal brand on Instagram. People can just find me there. My user is Logan_Lessar. But just helping people grow physically and mentally through basically my videos that I'm posting on there every single day, through my stories where I'm showing my daily routine, waking up at 4 every day, going to the gym first thing, and then basically working all throughout the day, getting things done, moving forward and growing myself, and then trying to help others do the same. And then if people want to have more of a closer interaction with me and basically get coached by me, then they can message me on Instagram and join the program and get some actual help and everything in the areas that I've been able to grow myself over the last couple of years.
That's awesome. We'll also provide all of that stuff for them because we want them
Yeah,
to gain access to you
for sure.
and get a chance to witness your growth as well as you be able to assist them with their growth. Our custom here, Logan, is to go back. We want to go back into
Yeah,
your childhood. After mom and dad kissed you, the handsome boy grew up in the hospital, all is
yeah,
well, things are doing good, as they say. Um, and everybody is kissing you and all is good. They brought you into the house. They put you into that first cage, I tell people, and they're holding us there. And now they're going to program you and I as to how we ought to think, walk, feel, and all
yeah.
of that stuff. What was your family unit like?
Yeah, I've got an amazing family. I got blessed with some incredible parents who have always been extremely, extremely supportive, and they've always put myself and my brother before them. They've always given us the tools that we need in order to do whatever it is that we want to do, and they instilled the beliefs in myself at least, and I know in my brother as well. But they instilled the beliefs and um, the skills and everything of discipline, and that it takes hard work in order to get the things that you want and to really be successful and to win at life. And the main lessons that I learned came through my motocross racing career, which they started me on very, very early. But no, I got very lucky with some amazing parents, and I wouldn't be where I am without them, that's for sure. So I've got a really good family.
Oh, that is awesome. I love to hear the stories because it gives the individual a foot up, if you will, where they're able
Yeah,
to walk through and gain some wisdom, especially when you have parents that are insightful. And as a result of their insights, they're able to deposit within their family, their
yeah,
children, their siblings, and so forth, some good stuff, if you will. So here you are, you got a
yeah,
chance to experience this insights and your wisdom and the security in your family. And they began to drop some stuff in you to assist you in your growing up. With that information, that knowledge, Logan, how did you respond to those that were outside of your family, as far as like your schoolmates and stuff like that? What was that those
yeah.
relationships like with the background and the stuff that your mom and dad are depositing within you?
Yeah, so I It was interesting in terms of relationships. I've always been an introvert, first off. Like, I've always been very, very introverted. I just kind of liked being on my own. I would get the most energy from just being on my own, doing my own thing, which obviously there's benefits and weaknesses to that. But it was interesting because since motocross was like my entire life,
Yeah.
literally up until like last year, that was mainly my group that I would be with. And I would only
Hmm.
be with them at the races and at the track and at practice and everything. But those were my people. Like, those were the people that I respected the most, that I just liked the most, that I was able to connect to the most. Whereas I never really connected with the people at school as much,
Yeah.
just because it's different worlds. Like, the motocross world is just very, very different than like team sports and anything like that. So, and I've always been an adrenaline junkie. My whole family is, because we'd race motocross, we'd ski, snowboard, wakeboard, mountain bike, like all kinds of things. So yeah, I kind of just went to school and did my own thing, and I'd meet some cool people and have some good friends and everything. But no, I didn't have the biggest social life at school, that's for sure. But I still like went through and I enjoyed it. I was a happy person and everything. I did really,
Yeah.
really well through school. But one of the things for me that was really important, my dad is the one who taught me this, and I absolutely stuck to it to a T, which ended up helping me a lot.
Yeah.
Is he told me going into, and I really embraced it going into middle school, because I was nervous going into middle school because I didn't know anybody really, and I wasn't the most social person by any means. So it
Yeah.
was definitely nerve wracking. But he basically told me what he did when he was in school, and he was basically like, just be kind. As cheesy as it sounds, be kind to everybody. Like,
Yeah.
you don't need to be best friends with everybody, you don't need to love everybody, but
Yeah.
just be nice to everybody. Like, there's no
Yeah.
reason to be mean or anything like that. So I just really instilled that, and it didn't matter who it was, I would just be nice to them and treat them as if they were a friend.
Hmm.
And it really worked for me, because it didn't matter who it was, especially in middle school. I found that it didn't matter who it was, even in high school. They would maybe pass me in the halls, whether if it was a football jock or a total like computer nerd,
Yeah.
as I would just say, or as anybody would say, or whoever it is, it didn't matter. They would always talk to me, or I would talk to them as if we were good friends. Like, it didn't matter. And even the people who there was a few people in particular who I can remember, who got picked on a lot, whether it was because they were really overweight, or it didn't matter, but
Yeah.
they would get picked on a lot by the other people. And I would just be that one who was always kind to them, and I would treat
Hmm.
them just like I would treat anybody else. And they would end up coming and just being around me whenever they could, because they knew that being around me would be okay. Like, they wouldn't get all that hate and all that negativity and everything, because I wasn't the person to give that. I just didn't see any point in doing that. I
Yeah.
never ever got a dopamine hit or whatever it is that these people get when they're mean to others. Like,
Yeah.
I feel terrible about myself if I make somebody else feel bad. So that was one of probably the biggest things, and I appreciate my dad for teaching me that, because it's helped me a lot thus far. Is
Yeah.
literally as simple as it is. You don't need to be best friends with everybody, but just treat
Yeah.
everybody well, and it really goes a long way.
It's a powerful principle. It actually saved my life in high school. I
Oh
went to high
wow.
school in New York. I just came from British Guiana. I don't know much about America, and I'm in high school, and it's a total foreign, different place to me. But my dad did similar. He says, just be kind and so forth. And so I did that. Was kind to everyone. It didn't matter to me at all. I was just um, open book and would say hi to people and all the time. And this is way back, probably before you were even born, man. Um, my high school in New York was one of the toughest places. They had a documentary done on how
Oh wow.
bad it was, and they busted a prostitution ring. I mean, this was like a
Wow.
tough place.
Yeah.
And back in the day when it was Roots that came out, and again, I'm coming from a different country, and I'm now assimilating into the culture of America. And I remember when Roots came out, and that it was a TV series at the time. The next day, there was this big riot in the middle of my school, coming in the hallway, based on color and so forth. And I walked into this thing after I came out of one of my class. I walked into the hallway and I'm standing there in the middle of this riot. And as soon as I'm walking in it came out, both sides said, "Don't touch him, let him go." And I was able to walk right through. Nothing, no one did anything to me. Wow. Once I walked through, all
Yeah.
hell broke loose. Comps were called, people in hospital. But because of that principle that I was instructed by my father, just like yours, that kindness goes a long way. And once you
Yeah.
treat someone equal to yourself and not one that mentality of one superior to the other in any way, shape, or form, that's not how you engage. And so it saved my life that that thinking, and I know the value of it. So here you are, man. You are going through. Your dad gave you some excellent advice. You're walking through, hanging out with your buddies, and I was going to ask you, how did you get involved with that type, the NASCAR piece? But you told me that your family was into all of that, and so forth. So here you are. Talk a little about that. Here's this kid. He is exposed to all of this from his family. What was it
Yeah.
about that, Logan, that grabbed you versus the other things like the skiing and all the other things? What was it about that particular sport that appealed to you? And how did you perform in it?
Yeah, so in terms of performance and everything, I went very, very far with the sport, and I will say I'm not done. There's a lot
Yeah,
of people who that I believe that life is all about seasons. Like you'll go through different
I
seasons in
agree.
life, and right now I'm in a season of working and building a personal brand and helping people grow and growing myself and building a business and everything like that, and then I might go back into another season of just racing motocross and going all in. So I'd never believe that I'm like done by any means, but I have won upwards of like 15 state championships here in Colorado, and then
Nice.
also a few national championships, and
Congrats,
then
man.
placed top fives and top tens at some of the top races in the country and arguably the world in terms of motocross. So I went very, very far with it. Um, and yeah, in terms of what got me into it and everything, well, my parents raced before I was even born, and they raced at a
Yeah.
pretty high level as well. They did really, really well. And
Hmm.
then they just threw me on a bike as soon as they could. I think I was like 2 when I first got on a bike. And then I just kind of, they would obviously take me to the track. We would ride. I'd love it. I enjoyed it. That was like my life. And then they'd still be
Yeah.
racing. So when they were racing, I would be back at like the trailer, and there was like these little plastic toy dirt bikes that you could
Yeah.
get. And I would literally just be in the dirt playing with that all day long. And then obviously I'd want to ride whenever I could. And then I
Yeah.
think I first started like actually racing at like the age of 8, but I had
Hmm.
just been riding all the time, so I just kind of fell in love with it naturally because that's just what I did.
Yeah.
And then I just over time, since I just was an introverted person, I was so used to riding and racing that I tried the basketball, I tried the soccer, I think I barely tried baseball. The only one I stuck to for a decent bit was basketball, but I didn't even stick to it that long. And
Yeah.
I didn't like those because I like the individual part of like motocross and everything. Like I just liked how it was an individual sport. It was all on me, and I
Yeah.
wasn't relying on a team or anything like that. And it was like whether I won or lost was on my shoulders 100%. And I
Yeah.
really, really liked that aspect. And then I don't know what it was about motocross compared to like skiing or snowboarding or mountain biking, and why
Yeah.
I just wanted to go all in on motocross versus the other ones. I think it was just because that was like the main thing that my family did, and then I just naturally kind of went into it, and I just loved it. Like I just fell in love with it.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's still nothing that comes close to the adrenaline feeling that I get in a race, that's for sure. So no, motocross, my family just brought me into it, and then I just fell in love over time.
Yeah. Well, being in the motocross competition and all of that stuff in at that level, one has to a mind state, if you will, has to be, you have to develop a specific mind
Oh
state to
yeah.
function at that level and to maintain your focus and so forth. What were some of those things, Logan, that your dad, I'm sure your mom and dad brought some information to you? What were some of those information that they deposit to you to assist you with forming and creating the mindset that is necessary for that type of competition?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that they instilled in me, which translates to every area of life, my businesses, everything,
Hmm.
is the no quit mentality.
Yeah,
Because when I was like really young and I was coming up in the racing and everything, there was so many times that I wanted to quit, like whether it just downpoured and the track was just a muddy mess and the race was still on and we were still going to
yeah,
race. I did not want to. Like I wanted to throw in the towel, stay dry. Like I didn't want to go out on that muddy track. But they were like, no, like you're like we don't quit. Like that's not something we do. Like we do not quit. We're not quitters.
yeah,
You're going out there, and obviously I'd have to go out there, and then I would still do the race and everything. And afterwards, I'd feel that sense of accomplishment, and I'd be like, I just did
yeah.
that. Like that was really difficult, and I just did it. And then over time, as I grew up, they transitioned, or like their message transitioned from no, you don't quit, you need to go out there. It transitioned because obviously I was growing up and getting to the age where I can make my own decisions. So it
Yeah.
transitioned from them telling me like, no, you have to do this, to they transitioned to kind of like, well, like if there was a race where I was like, I don't want to go out there. Like I had a full breakdown a few years ago at Minios in Florida, and it was bad. Like I wanted to leave, and it's like the second biggest race of the year, and I
Right.
genuinely wanted to pack everything up and just leave. And they would basically be like, listen, it's up to you, you're the racer, you get to decide if you want to do it or not. Like we're not going to tell you what to do, blah blah blah. So they
Hmm.
would position it in a way where it was my choice, but at the same time they did it in a very tedious way because I'd be sitting there and I'd be so like, I want to leave, I want to quit, I don't want to do this. But then they would tell me, well, it's up to you, I mean, we can leave, we can go if you want. But they do it in a way where I was like, God damn it, well now I can't because I'll feel bad. So I would still have to do it. But they instilled that just no quit, like you do not quit. And then over time it just got instilled in me as just a
Yeah,
very deep down belief of, if you're going to do something, you're going to do it until you can't do it anymore, or there's a genuine reason why you have to stop. And it's just, there's no quit mentality. Like if it doesn't work, like in business at least, one thing I've learned is it's not always going to work. There's plenty of things that never worked for me, but it's
oh yeah,
not about like, oh, well, that didn't work, I'm just going to go back to doing my normal thing or whatever. It was, okay, let me try something else. Let me try
yeah,
this. Let me try the next thing. Like there was never a, it didn't work, well, I'm done. It's okay, that didn't work. Let's see if this works. Like, let's
yeah,
try this next thing, this next thing. Like, just the constant process of trying to find what works, you know?
yeah.
So just that no quit mentality. That was the biggest thing that I think they taught me over the years, that's translated to every area of life.
It's a powerful lesson. One should not quit because I'll tell you a couple of stories. I was sick. I was in high school. Was it high school? I think it was high school. I'm sick. Yeah, it was high school. I'm sick as a dog. And it is our championship day for track and field. I was running track and field, and I said to my coach, I said, I can't do it. I don't feel too well. And he said, no. He said, this is the perfect time to run. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I can't do this. And he's like, yeah, you're going
Yeah.
to run the race. And I was like, I was fighting him. And Racanelli, I'll never forget Racanelli. Racanelli said, he used to call me Primus. Primus, get on the track. It's time. And so I got up at the race, and Logan, the gun went off, and I took off. At the end of the race, I broke all the school records. I set the record for state at the time. Um, uh, I
Yeah.
didn't even know that I got into a zone, if you will, and all I could hear was just my breathing. I didn't hear anyone around me. Didn't I was in that space where I'm sure you've been there as an
Yeah.
athlete. When you're in that space, nothing really on the outside, the peripheral exists except for that time and space. Another example is Michael Jordan. He did one of his best while he was sick one night, and he was on the court, and he's like had a flu and they didn't want to play, and he played, and some of the best basketball in your life, you ask your mom and dad, I'm sure they'll tell you about that, was that night when he was sick. So something happens to us when we get there, Logan, that we when we push beyond, because as an athlete, that's the sweet spot. Even though we
Yeah.
judge it by how we feel, but it is much more than that. It is a state that one
Yeah.
has to put yourself in, and where it bypasses the feeling, and it becomes, you have to recognize that you need to put yourself in a certain state in order to accomplish what it is. And so there's a difference between the feeling and the state. The state is the one that you have to get yourself through. So
Yeah.
I'll give you that advice, like your mom and dad. You keep going, man, and you find that state, and you can find it when you're sick, when you're well, but find it. It's you know how to get there. So here you are learning some powerful tools, and I can understand it. And the reason why I'm probing, Logan, is so that as we get through the interview, people will begin to
Yeah.
see, where did you get it from? How did you get to this place? And you are now able, because you have been through it, you are now able
Yeah.
to guide them in achieving those states. And when you get to there, it's where your freedom, that's where the switch happens. So here you are, you're learning all of these things as you are moving through your life. Now that you are, once you are getting all the accolades, if you will, and there comes a point when everyone is starting to look at you and say, that's the one. You got to beat this guy, because I've been there. So here you are. You're now getting to that place. Um, that's the one. How did you begin to respond to that information? Because it is information, as people began to notice you. What was happening to you, the individual, Logan? What did it change you? What was happening to you with all of that accolade, if you will?
Yeah, I loved it. Like in the motocross world, especially in Colorado, like
Yeah.
I've always been like the guy. And I say this
Hmm.
humbly, but like this is genuinely the truth because when I would show up to the track, I knew that I was there to win and I would win most of the time and that's how I
Yeah.
won so many championships here in Colorado. So whenever I showed up to the track, like everybody knew me when I was and I would always show up to the staging area before my race and then to the starting line and I would just show up there like with this feeling of like honestly, I just felt so cool, I guess,
Yeah.
because I would just be sitting there and I knew that I was the one who was gonna win. And
Yeah.
obviously I had competition and I was nervous. I had those usual nerves athletes go through and obviously there was a chance I wasn't gonna win. I was like, oh shit, he's here, like I need to beat him, blah blah blah. But I still had this mentality of like I'm the top dog
Hmm.
and it was just like this really good feeling, because even when I go back to school, like I'd bring that with me, and that's how I
Yeah.
would go through school, and I just wouldn't care about what other people really thought, and I wouldn't care about being friends with the jocks, and I think that also helped with me being able to be kind to other people because people tend to put others down in order to try and bring themselves up. And
Hmm.
I've always hated that. And I've never faced that because I brought myself up with the racing and I just
Yeah.
knew at the races I was the top dog. And I even told my parents this that after a race, like especially a race that I won, when I'd go back to school the following week, I would just go back with like this feeling of like hell yeah, like I'm a beast, like I'm the top
Yeah.
dog.
Yeah.
And I'd go to school and just feel awesome and I would feel so confident and like with my head up high and everything,
Yeah.
because I knew that I was the top guy in one of the hardest sports out there in the state and everything. So no, I loved it, and I do genuinely think that was a good thing for me to experience, because it's been instilled in me where like I have to be that in every area of life. Like
Yeah.
if I'm going to do business, I want to be the top dog in business. Like I
Yeah.
want to be the one that people are looking at and being like, that's the guy, or that's the
Yeah.
man. Like he kills it. Like we got to learn from this guy, or we got to try and beat this guy, or whatever it is. Like I have to be that in all areas. And the quote that I live by, which I actually came up with just the other day, is the daily pursuit of becoming undeniable in every realm of human endeavor, which is basically meaning the being undeniable. Like when I showed up to the track at a
Yeah.
Colorado race, it was like people would look at me and it was undeniable that I was like competing to win. Like they would
Yeah.
look at me and be like, he is probably gonna win this weekend. Like it was undeniable that I was the guy. And that's kind of what I want to be in all areas. So it was an important thing to be instilled in me. And I think one of the biggest um, traits that I've brought on is just that just desire of I have to be the top guy in
Yeah.
this area, and I'm going to do whatever it takes in order to be that, because it's like a standard that I have.
Yeah.
And people always say like you'll never like raise up to what you need in order to achieve your goals, but you'll never lower yourself down and breach your standards or something like that. So it's
Yeah.
like a standard of mine of if I'm going to do something, like I have to be the guy, or else it's just like the worst feeling ever. So if I'm feeling
Yes.
that feeling of like, oh shit, I'm not the top guy, then that's like a motivator. And it's like, I need to get back to work. Like I need to get back to work. I need to focus. I need to get better. I need to improve, blah, blah, blah. So no, that was,
Yeah.
that was big.
Yeah. It's a mindset that one has to adopt to
Yeah.
stay, even to get there and to stay there. And the thing about staying is it's in sports, you complacency is a killer. It'll always, when one becomes complacent, that's when you start losing. You always
Yeah.
have to look at someone, have the mentality that there's someone else that is coming, but before he can get here, I'm going to make sure that everyone knows
Yeah.
that I'm here. Um, I'll tell you this funny story, man. It's really hysterical. It happened by accident. I'm running track, and I usually have, track. We had our shoes and stuff together, and I had a big race, and I had forgotten my socks, and I called my sister. I'm like, "Hey, can you buy me some socks so that I can, have it before my race?" She said, "Sure." So she goes up. I said, "I need, just ankle socks." My sister, I'm telling this. So she runs to the store, Logan, and she buys me some ankle sock with pom poms in the back of it. She's buying stuff for a girl. And she shows up at at the time that we're getting in line, and she gives me this thing, and I'm ripping out the to put on the sock before we get on, and I couldn't get everything off, so I had to run with these pink pom poms on my shoes in the race, and uh, it became my symbol as because I won the race, and so every time after that, I'd make sure that I'd have these damn pink pom poms on my thing, and I remember one time I was coming to a race, and this guy putting on, getting dressed, and getting my mindset, getting in that space, and I hear one of the guys, a couple of guys, "That's the guy in the palms with the pom poms." And so I understand that mentality where you say when people come, they are coming to with the mindset thinking that that's the guy that is going to win. And so when they come like that, they've already lost. They're not coming
Yeah.
to beat you. They're coming for second and third and stuff like that. And you have to become that dominant within your space, and you get there
Yeah.
by being just constant and never giving up and looking to better self always. So here you are, you've attained much and you're moving through your life. As you are moving into the motocross space, Logan, and I know you said, and I believe in that, that for a season, as you
Yeah.
were doing this, and what was happening to you when you were beginning to feel that there is coming a change of season, if you will?
Yeah, so it was challenging, that's for sure, because I ended up reaching out to all of my really, really close, or I won't even say all of my, because it's a very small group of
Yeah.
us, and we're all basically brothers. Like I haven't even seen each of them in probably over like a year, to be honest, just because
Hmm.
everybody kind of dispersed and they all went to college and everything. But we next time we see each other, I guarantee we'll pick up right where we left off. Like we're basically brothers now. But I
Yeah.
was in Cape Town at the time, and I was basically thinking about like I was still racing as well, and I was pursuing my business and all this stuff, and I kind of was realizing like if I want to take my business to where I really know I can and where I want it to be, I'm gonna have to go all in on it, which means I'm going to have to push the racing to the side and completely kind of move away from that for now. And that
Yeah.
was difficult. And honestly, it goes directly back to that idea of being the top guy, because that was one of the
Yeah.
main things that worried me is I was so terrified of going from being the top guy to then
Hmm.
going all in on my business and then returning to racing and no longer
Yeah.
being that person and having lost
Hmm.
that. And that
Yeah.
was like so terrifying to me. But I ended up reaching out to my really close friends, and they were really, really helpful in helping me kind of figure out what I wanted to do and whether it was going to be the right choice or not, which I know that it was the right choice for sure to go all in on the business side. And I know that I'll probably return to the racing here at some point, but I know that that was the right move. But no, it was difficult because I was leaving behind basically the biggest part of my life in
Yeah.
the last freaking 15 years or whatever. Um, I was basically leaving that behind and risking losing being kind of like the top guy in that field. So it was very scary, but I just basically was like, I had to figure out what I really wanted and I had to weigh my options and be like, well, if I go back to racing and like in 2023, because this was in 2022 that I was thinking about all this, I was like, in 2023, if I do the same thing with racing and I go to these races and I'm still working on my business, if at the end of 2023, my business is at the same place it is right now and I did all the racing and stuff, would I be very happy with that? And then I basically compared it to if I didn't race at all in 2023 and I just focused completely on business, but I like doubled or tripled where I'm at right now, would that bring me more fulfillment? Like, would I be better off with that? And I decided that I'd prefer that situation.
Hmm.
So I did a lot of thinking in order to figure out kind of what I wanted to do. But at the same time, and this comes down to mindset, I then was kind of like, well, the main thing that scares me is I don't want to return to racing and not be the top guy anymore. So basically, I was like, well, why do I think that that's going to happen? Like, why do I think that I'm just going to all of a sudden go from being the top guy down to like way below that or something?
Yeah.
And I basically decided that wasn't going to happen. Like I figured out a lot with my mindset with the racing world and like to really get into that state of flow and to be able to perform at the race really, really well. I figured that out just in like the last 2 years. And
Hmm.
basically, I decided like even when I was going to go all in on business, in my head to other people, to my parents, to everybody, I was like, I will tell you right now, when I get back on that bike, I will be the same, if not better than I am at the moment. Guaranteed. Like I have there's no question about that. I could disappear off of that bike for a year and I will still show up the same way that I do right now. And funny enough, when I get on the bike, because I still ride now,
Yeah.
whenever I'm home and everything, when I get on that bike, I genuinely feel just as good as I did in the past, if not better. So, and it really just comes down to that mindset, because I heard an Olympic swimmer say it, and it's so true. And I've experienced it, which is when you get to a certain level, especially in sports and everything,
Hmm.
everybody's talented. Like everybody who
Yeah.
shows up is talented. They've got skills. They've been training. They've been coached. Like everybody knows what they're doing. When it comes to like the race and who's going to actually do the best, it's how they show up to the race mentally.
Hmm.
So when they show up, it's like 90% mental and 10% what you know and the talent and everything. And I just took that to heart. And I was like, I've been trained by the top trainers in the world, in the country. I've lived this. I've competed at some of the highest levels you can and done really, really well. I will show up just as good, regardless of if it's a month from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, doesn't matter. I'll do the work in order to get myself back into the right physical shape in order to race and everything. And I'll show up the same, if not even better at that time. Which that's come to fruition, because even though I haven't raced in a while, I still go to the track and show up, and the way that I feel and the way that I'm riding, I know for a fact if I went to a race, if I trained and got into like the right endurance shape and everything, because I'm in good physical shape, like I'm in really good shape, but in order to race, I need to like get my
Yeah.
endurance up. So if I
Yeah.
did that, I know for a fact that I'd be able to do really, really well, if not better than I even did in the past.
Yeah. It's that when you become familiar with the process, if you will, and how to get to where you need to mentally, it happens. I can be in a crowd of hundreds of thousands of people. And my friends used to say this
Yeah,
to me when I was back then, yeah, hanging out in Orlando. They would look at me and say, "Man, you are. We know when you've left." And I tell them, how I can put myself in the state that I need to be in. I've learned
yeah,
once I recognize it, Logan, I can do it within a few seconds. I can put it, and I'll be in a crowd of millions of people and be in my state. And
yeah,
once you know how to do it, and again, athletes, I think, have the key to that, and versus when it comes to someone that is not an athlete. We meditate all the time. We've learned how to incorporate meditation. We learn how to, these are all the tools that one uses to put oneself in that state. Meditation, visualization, we learn about the breathing technique, all of these things, these tools that
yeah,
others will take a while to learn about. An athlete is practicing this all day long. And so it's easier for an athlete to walk into that space. And
yeah,
we are able to now, as you are doing, guide people into that, uh, the process of how to get there.
yeah,
So here you are, you made your decision because that's a gutsy move to step out because you're now stepping out. As you mentioned, uncertainty is all around you, but you had to have a conversation with yourself about that uncertainty. How am I going to manage it? And you've
yeah,
decided that you're going to manage it, and you know that you will be able to walk back into that mind state easily. Condition, of course, that'll take your time. So as you begin to do your business and step out on the entrepreneurial way, and you're now carrying that mindset with you. What was it like doing the first steps in that new field, the new business, the new things? How, even though you're carrying this mindset, I'm sure there's a little shakiness, if you will. How did you make that transition from carrying from the motocross to the business?
yeah. So luckily I actually started like in business in my first business at 15.
Hmm.
So I had kind of like started and kind of was doing that on the side with the racing. Like the racing was still like my main thing at the time, and I was getting into business, and then eventually like the last couple years it was kind of like a 50-50 split of business and racing.
Yeah.
And then basically at the end of last year is when I decided, okay, I'm going to put racing to the side. I'm going to go all in on business. So I would say it was actually a really smooth transition in terms of that point, because I had already
Hmm.
been in the business side and everything. And I was honestly, once I made the decision, I was genuinely excited about it, because I was like, this is going to be great. Like, I'm going to be able to put all my focus into growing the business. The potential of this is awesome. Like, I'm going to travel the world next year, meaning this year. And
Yeah.
I've already spent 3 months in Cape Town, the beginning of this year. So working and everything, and I was just really excited about it. But I'd say the most difficult point where I faced the most adversity with kind of the switch and everything was actually at the beginning of last year. And I was in Cape Town, and that was the first time I went to Cape Town. But I flew down there and I was by myself, and I was 18. I'd never been to Cape Town before,
Hmm.
and I didn't know a single person there. And I booked my Airbnb before I even left home. So
Yeah.
I didn't like know any of the right areas or where to stay. And to be honest, thinking back, it was really stupid of me not to watch some YouTube videos or something of like to learn a little bit about Cape Town, in terms of like the right areas and all this
Areas.
stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't, to be honest, that thought just came to mind. I don't know why I didn't do that, but but no, luckily I only booked that Airbnb for like the first week, and then I was like, once I'm there, I'll kind of learn the areas, and then I could book one
Yeah.
in like the better area or something. But I went down there and I landed, got my Uber. Obviously, there's like the adrenaline of like, I'm here, sweet, long after a long flight. I got to my place, got all settled and everything. And then I kind of just jumped right into it. And the following days, I'd get up early in the morning and then I'd get to work and stuff. But that week was like the one time so far in my life that I've genuinely like felt pretty depressed,
Hmm.
because I didn't know why I was doing it. Like, I would wake up and I'd be sitting there at my desk. It wasn't the nicest Airbnb. It wasn't, views are really important to me. Like, I love having a good view. And
Yeah.
I just, when I look at my view, I'm like, oh my God, like the new place that I stay at in Cape Town now has the most incredible view ever. Like, I look at it every day and I'm like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
But this view at the place I stayed at originally wasn't the greatest. So I'd be looking out the window and I'd be working and I'd be sitting there and I was like, I'm 10,000 miles from home. I'm 10,000 miles from my family, friends, anybody I know. I've basically, because at the time I knew it was going to have an effect on my racing. Like, I knew I wasn't training as much as everybody else. I mean, I was going to be in a different country for 3 months
Yeah.
and not ride at all. So I was like, I was nervous about how I was going to perform at my races coming up. And I was just sitting there like, why am I doing this? Like, I was terrified that I was going to look back 5 years from then,
Hmm.
even if I made it big time with business and I made all this money and all this stuff. I was terrified I was going to look back and be like, I wish I didn't give up on the motocross, or I wish I
Yeah.
didn't put it to the side like that. So I was terrified. And that just moved me into, okay, I need to figure this out. Like, I need to
Yeah.
figure out why I'm doing this and what I really want to do here. Like, do I want to really pursue the business side of things, or do I want to pursue the motocross? Like, what
Yeah.
is it that I want to do? So I focused on that for weeks, and I actually worked with a mindset coach who I was paying to work with for the next couple weeks, and learning a lot about like meditation, mapping out my why, like all these different things. And then that was just a major transformation for me. And then all of last year, if I summed up last year, it would be mindset. Like, that's where I grew the most, as
Hmm.
cheesy as that sounds, but genuinely that's where I grew the most. And but yeah, that was a really important experience though, because that's what helped me figure out what was the right choice for me, because I was sitting there just like, I have to figure this out. Like, I need to know what I want to do and why I want to do it, so that I know 5 years from now, I'm going to, like, 5 years from now, at least now I know in my current state, I'll be like, I chose this and I do know why I'm doing this. So I
Yeah.
have no worry that 5 years from now, I'm going to look back and be like, I don't regret anything. I don't have any regrets. Whereas at that time, that was what I was terrified of, was looking back 5 years and wishing I stuck to the motocross. Because another thing with the racing and kind of setting that to the side that scared me, it wasn't like with business, like with your career or business or work, everybody says like you have your whole life to work, which is true. And I knew that I could technically return to business or return to working anytime. Motocross isn't necessarily the same. Like with
Yeah.
sports, you can't really do that. You've got like a finite period that you can
Yeah.
do it until you're either too old to do it, or obviously you can't compete at the same level, and everything like that. So I knew that my time was now for that. So I
Hmm.
was terrified of that, because I didn't want to. I still wanted to be the top guy with racing, but I also didn't want to sit back and wait for a couple years before I got into business and started really growing that side. So I wanted like both of these things at the same time, but I knew I needed to go all in on something. And my dad also told me, like months prior to this, he was like, eventually you're going to have to go all in on your business. And I was like, oh no, I'll be able to balance everything. I could do it all. Like, no worries. But then I ended up realizing, like, shit, for me to actually do this the way I want to and to grow it to where I want it to be, I
Yeah.
do have to go all in. So, but no, that was the toughest point for me to have to get through and everything. But it was also a really pivotal moment and important.
Yeah. I try to tell people the human being is designed to focus on things. We can do more than one, which we can, I can multitask.
Yeah,
Um, I can read and listen to music, and people want to know what's wrong with me, because I'll be listening to a book, I'll be reading a book, I'll be watching a TV, I'd be watching this, and people are asking, "What's wrong with you?" And they would ask me about each thing, and I would stop and say, "Yeah, this is what's happening here, and it's and whatever." But I don't know, maybe I'm a freak of nature, Logan. But the human being is designed to focus. He needs something, and we become even more powerful when we focus. And I tell
yeah,
people this about their life, circular living. When I look at people and I see that they have a circular life, it's easy to describe, because, and I would say to them, you're circular because you haven't made a decision yet. You're thinking about what you want to do or what you think you should do and so forth. And because you're in that state, you are not focused. And so you're circular. But the minute you
yeah,
become single minded, and I tell them, when you do that, the human being is designed that when we become single minded, we then implement the process by which that is necessary to get us to achieve what we just made a decision on. Yours was mindset. You recognized it, and you went and you got a mindset coach to help you to navigate through your circular thinking so that you can become focused. And once you
yeah.
became focused, things began to change. So talk to us, because right there, things do change. What were those changes that you saw that happened when you began to really truly focus, Logan? Because you have to switch, as your dad said. I mean, the human being, as I said, our mind is designed to see that bullseye and hit that mark.
Yeah, in terms of like when I really started focusing on the mindset and like why I was doing it, um and I kind of figured that out in Cape Town and just over the course of last year. The
Mm-hmm.
biggest thing was I transitioned from the wants to the why, because everybody kind of knows what they want. And for the longest time, I was kind of working, and the motocross was good in a way because it definitely was a bit of a distraction, because then I'd work and work and work, and I'd work on my business and I'd be focused on that. But then when I'd go to the track and I'd race and everything, it was like a completely different world. So I was able to kind of go and do that and then race and kind of let my mind go free and all this stuff. And then I could return to working and go
Yeah.
back to business and everything. So it was definitely nice in that way. But then once I got secluded and I was in Cape Town and I was just working, that's where all these thoughts came to mind of like, well, why am I doing this? Blah, blah, blah. And the main reason that I had been working for up until that point was, I mean, I wanted the money. I wanted the cool cars. I wanted to be able to
Yeah.
travel. I wanted to be able to take care of my family, like all these things. And those are material,
Mm-hmm.
those aren't like very strong reasons. And I also came to the realization pretty early on that like I knew there was a lot of very successful quote unquote people who made a lot of money who were very depressed, even people who
Mm-hmm.
committed
Yeah.
suicide, like all this stuff. And I wanted to understand why. And I wanted to, because that scared me too, because I will say that I had no doubt, and I still have no doubt of where I'm going to get and that I'm going to achieve those levels. Like I have full confidence in myself and my work ethic and what I do and everything. So that was never a question for me. The real question was, I was just worried that once I get there, I'm not going to, I'm not going to, like, I was terrified that I would be in that same state where I would feel
Yeah.
like this is it. Like, this is what I've been working for. Like, I missed out on all this stuff. Like, I regret this. I regret this. And I was terrified of that. So I wanted to figure that out very, very quickly. And that's obviously what I went through in Cape Town and everything, but it was really just the transition of going from the wants, which is like for example, I would say most men, especially young men my age, like we want to drive supercars. Like we want to drive cool cars, you know, and get the good looking ladies and everything like that. But when it comes to the cars, one thing I understood early on is that whether it's a Ferrari, a McLaren, a Lamborghini, whatever it is, when you first get it, it's like, wow, like this is amazing.
Yeah.
Like I've got this, like that's unbelievable. But after a couple weeks, it becomes your car. Like it's just your
Yeah.
car. So it's not going to
Hmm.
bring that same level of fulfillment and everything. So I knew that early on. So I knew like once I get those things, that's not going to bring me the quote unquote happiness or the
Yeah.
fulfillment or whatever it is. So I knew I needed to kind of figure out the why and everything. And that was really the biggest transition that I had, was going from the wants to figuring out the why. Like, why do I really want those things? Like, why am I actually working on this? Why do I want the money and all of this stuff? And that's what's kind of just guided me along the way and kept me focused and kept me, I won't say motivated, but kept me working through even when I don't feel like it, like still doing the things I need to do even when I don't feel like it, because I understand kind of the why behind it all and why I'm actually working and everything like that. So that was the biggest thing and the biggest shift that I had.
Okay. Anyone that has been listening to this podcast, I mean, what Logan just talked about is one of the most powerful stuff, and that's why I'm glad he's here because he can assist you in understanding the whys because he is a mindset coach and he can, because he's learned all of these uh, um, insights and ways by which one can identify the difference because it is key to life. I have also known millionaires that have committed suicide and killed themselves and so forth because they were chasing the wants and they never dealt with the whys.
Yeah.
And I've interviewed millionaires that came on this show and dealt with the whys, and those guys are something else. There's just a power
Yeah.
uh, energy on this planet making a difference, and money is just a subset of their life. It is not the entirety of their life. And I have someone
Yeah.
that has learned these principles at a young age, and he will be able to guide you guys. So here you are, Logan. You have now went through all of these different, um, as far as guidance with your mindset coach. How did you now gravitate to that arena? It's like, wait a minute, I have something to offer here that I'm able to put together to assist those that or in my state are coming up like me or whatever. How did that shift happen?
Yeah, so it was interesting because I will say that I think a lot of people have a negative connotation or notation or whatever the word is, with kind of like the whole online coaching space and the gurus and all that stuff. And I did too. Because like I never wanted to really be an online coach because I didn't want to be looked at that way of like, oh, you're an online coach, like another
Yeah,
guru out there, blah blah blah. Like I didn't want that. Like I wanted to actually build a business and do something and
yeah,
do something undeniable, like I said, versus somebody being able to look at you and be like, oh, you're an online coach. Like, who are you to say that? Blah, blah, blah. So
yeah.
I had no interest in doing it whatsoever. And over the years, I ran my agency, which I still run. And I learned so much from that as well, just with mindset, business, all kinds of things. And one thing I learned about myself, which led to this whole coaching thing, is that I actually do really love helping people. And
Hmm.
I didn't start that way. When I first started business, like I said, all I cared about, I wanted the money, I wanted the cars, I wanted all
Yeah,
these cool things. And that's all I cared about. Like with the agency, I just wanted to close clients and bring on new clients so that I could make money and make that commission
Yeah.
and all this stuff. But then I ended up transitioning to actually working with these clients and being the one in the background who was communicating with them, speaking with them, getting on calls with them, and talking with them about growing their business, and basically seeing what the effect of our results were. And I was able to see what happens when we got really good results, and how
Hmm.
ecstatic the client was, how excited they were, and how thankful they were. And there was no better feeling than getting good results. But then on the flip side, there was no better feeling than getting bad results, because it happened,
Yeah.
obviously. Like there was many times we didn't get results, and it was the worst feeling in the world. I'd get on calls with clients, and I knew going into the call, I was like, this isn't going to go well. Like the results are just not there. Like this is not going to go well. And it didn't. And it was the worst feeling ever. So I hated that. And
Yeah.
I even got to the point where I cared so much. Like I would invest my own money and just like literally invest my own money to do things for their business that had nothing to do with our agency. That literally I just wanted to try and boost up their stuff to just try and get it
Hmm.
to work. Like I just had this level of care that I didn't even know I had. And
Yeah.
over time, that just grew with me, that I just cared way more about the outcome that my client got versus them like paying me or whatever it was. So that was something I didn't know about myself for a while, but I just learned it. And then leading to the coaching side, I just know how much first of all, getting in good physical shape, because I think that's the foundation of everything, especially a strong
Hmm.
mindset. I know the effect that has had on me, obviously, on a sports level and a competition level, but also just on a personal level. Like, I'll say that there's no better feeling than looking in the mirror, especially when you get like that unique angle or your hair looks good and you're like, whoa, like, I'm looking
Yeah.
good today. Like, damn, like there's
Yeah.
no better feeling than that, you know?
Yeah.
So that immediately is like awesome. So I know the effect that has, but then also the mindset, because for my whole racing career up until literally the last like 2 years, my mindset and like mental state is what held me back the most with my races, because
Yeah.
I would practice so well and I would feel like the fastest guy alive at the practice track and everything. But then once we got to the race, I would freeze up. I would get in my own head. My competitors would get in my head, and I'd be like, oh God, like, what if he's faster than me, or blah, blah, blah. And I
Yeah.
would not perform. I'd feel like shit on the track. I would just not perform. And then I was at Loretta Lynn's, which is the biggest amateur national race in the country, and arguably the world when it comes to motocross. And I've been there like 3 or 4 times now, but I
Hmm.
was there in 2021. And I just had this, I literally worked with a mindset coach there, and it was overnight that I learned this new thing. And it was just this concept that I put into practice in the race. And it was an overnight where I went from kind of struggling in the race to all of a sudden I
Hmm.
was competing up front with the top 5 guys in the country, and I felt on my game. Like I just
Yeah.
felt really good and full of confidence, no anxiety or worries or anything like that. So that immediately I was like, holy crap, like this mindset thing is so powerful. Like when you actually learn it and can control your mindset and your mentality and everything like that. So that was the first stage. And then obviously going through business, really learning how to control your emotions, your reactions, just everything, and how important mindset is. Just over the course of these years, I've just learned how important it is and how much it's affected my life. And then I've also just instilled that onto some of my close friends, my family, my parents as well.
Yeah.
I've been actually working with them to get them in shape lately, which has been pretty cool to do and stuff. So I've actually been taking them through my program, and
Yeah.
it's been kind of funny. It's been a fun experience, but I've just helped a lot of people in that area, and I just love it. And even these podcasts, like I love talking about just mindset and personal growth and everything. Like I could talk about all day long. So that's where I just found kind of my passion or like my purpose. Like I love doing this. So that's kind of what led to the coaching side and everything. And yeah, there's just no better feeling, you know, especially helping people grow on the personal level, because that'll help them
Yeah.
grow in all areas.
Yeah. We started on the onset. I told you there's nothing like being a servant. There are things there that until you get there and you get a chance to experience it, um, there's happiness that you can get outside of that. But when one becomes a servant, there's this joy, man, this thing when you get to see and you have the honor of witnessing someone getting it together within their mind, as you stated. And when they are
Yeah.
making that transition from um, the less than thinking and they moving and shifting their perspective, it's simply a shift in their perspective. And when they get it,
Yeah.
man, oh man, that space right there, as I mentioned to you, I think it is one of the most sacred space that we get a chance as a servant to be a part of. And that is a place only a servant is able to be witness to, if you will. And you guys are listening to us at this podcast. Um, this young man is here. He's gone through the stages. He's learned. Um, the motocross was just preparing you for here, Logan. And I
Yeah.
tell you, as an athlete, and I tell people everything in their life, the process by which you come through, all of it works for the
Yeah.
purpose of becoming a servant. Every single thing that you go through in life is to get you into that place because in that space, even Logan stated, he began to notice things about himself even more so when he got there. And you will too. And I
Yeah.
have someone that is equipped and is a mindset coach that will be able to walk with you, hold your hand. You guys are listening. I want you to get into his space. I'm going to provide his information. Become a disciple like him. I said, don't worry, don't hurry up to become a member. Members, they clock in, they clock out, or whatever. But when one becomes a disciple, you are able
Yeah.
to follow that teacher. You're able to ask him or her some deep questions, and you're able to get your freedom that way. Logan, I want to thank you for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. This has been good, and I hope the couch was not that bad.
No, it was nice. I enjoyed the conversation. It was awesome. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome, man.